trying to adjust to the time difference. I got in late last night. But I am just loving the weather. I know that probably I brought the rain, but we have had nothing but just awful humidity for months and rain in the Northeast. And so last night when I got off the plane, the crispness of the air was just, it was so incredibly refreshing. So I was worried. Snow was on my mind. And I'm glad that didn't happen. But before we start, so good morning, my name is Bell Ellwanger, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, but I thought we'd first start off with a video. Hope it works.
This is our big idea. When students, parents, and educators have the right information to make decisions, students excel. Student data is one of the most powerful tools to inform, engage, and create opportunities for each and every student along their unique education journeys. Education data is way more than test scores. It comes from many sources and in many formats, although the type of data and who can access it varies. But what does it mean to use data in service of learning? We imagine a future where everyone who supports students like Grace is empowered with the data they need to help those students succeed. Specifically, Grace's parents know what actions to take to help her on her path to success. They can be better champions for her. Parents are the ultimate decision makers. They are empowered to connect the dots across systems on their child's behalf. Teachers know where their students are excelling and struggling. They can personalize instruction to keep every student on track to success. Everyone involved in a student's life can use good information to create opportunities for them to succeed. Policymakers know what the big picture is, allowing them to direct resources to policies and programs that really work for students. And students like Grace know their strengths and where they need to grow throughout their journey. Grace can shape her own education journey to take her where she wants to go. Making data work for students means the right data in the right format, empowering everyone with the information they need to make decisions and take actions that lead to student achievement. We're all partners here. When we know what to do, we can help every student excel. We need data to make this vision a reality. Visit us at dataqualitycampaign.org to learn more.
So I just thought I'd get started with a little video this morning. And so as I mentioned, my name is Bell Ellwanger, and I have a confession to make. I really like data. Can you all hear me okay? Just make sure. I have focused on making data pop, making it come alive throughout my career. I started as a kindergarten teacher in the New York City public schools and went on to leadership positions in New York City and in Baltimore, Maryland, where Elsie shared a little bit. And then at the United States Department of Education, and finally now to the Data Quality Campaign. And I'll tell you a little bit more about the Data Quality Campaign in a moment. And so I've really spent the entirety of my career leading efforts to make data work for students and families. And I also understand firsthand many of the challenges that comes with, but the incredible opportunities that when you take on this important work, what can happen. And for that reason, I am thrilled to be able to speak with you here this morning and to be able to kick off a summit focused solely on data. Nothing excites me more. I know that's a week. And I really want us to hope that as you go through this conference today, not just in the session this morning, but throughout the conference, is thinking about your particular role within this whole data landscape and the role that you can play in ensuring information and evidence is used to drive success for students across the state of Montana. And so currently, as I mentioned, I serve as the president and CEO of the Data Quality Campaign. And you might be asking, what on earth is this a campaign? Am I going to get elected? Are we going to win an election? No, it is a campaign. The campaign is for data use and for access and accessibility and the availability of information. And so it's an education nonprofit based in DC, and again, it's focused entirely on improving the use of data in education. And guiding our work, as you saw in the video that just played, is we have this big idea. It's not earth-shattering, but it's a big idea. And it's a vision that informs everything that we do. The belief is that when everyone involved in helping to educate students, from teachers, school leaders, and families, many of you are here in the room, researchers and other folks, that when they have access to quality data, you are empowered to make the best possible decisions to support student learning and success. And so we obsess about this. We obsess every day about how to bring this vision to life, how to build the culture and capacity needed to put data to work in the service of student success. And the wonderful thing is that this passion and investment is something that each of you in the room share. When Elsie was asking who you are, what you do, many of you and most of you here that I know from my understanding of the agenda have real backgrounds and roles to play in this data. And so no matter if you are here as a principal, a teacher, an IT specialist, a school counselor, working to boost outcomes for students is the common goal. And at this summit is so timely because of the implementation of the Every Student Succeeds Act, commonly referred to as ESSA. And so the time could not be better for us to engage around how to leverage the power of data in education. And so to kick us off today, I wanted to share the video and to help ground us in that big idea and the power of what's possible when you put data to work in service of student success. At the heart of bringing the big idea to life are two foundational ideas. First, data is one of the most powerful tools to inform, engage, and create opportunities for students along their education journey. Data helps us make connections that lead to insights and improvements. Data helps those closest to students ask and answer critical questions about what's happening in schools and classrooms. And when used to inform meaningful dialogue around what's working, what's not, and how to improve, data can objectively help schools, districts, and communities bring them to policies and practices that can drive action to ensure all students' needs are being met. Second, what I think is so critical is recognizing that everyone, I've mentioned this before, probably you're going to get bored and sick of me saying that, but everyone, not just teachers, not just parents, not just school leaders, but everyone has an important role to play in supporting student learning. And only when we come together in venues like this and in other places and work together can this vision truly be achieved. So, no matter your role, data is the common thread. And you'll hear me say that a few times, and it's something that we really, as the Data Quality Campaign, really think about how data weaves in and through all of the work that we do. So the second point, this people part of making data work, is what I want to spend time talking about and unpacking a bit now. Regardless, again, of who you are in this room, what your role is in helping to educate students, data is really the tool that will help get you there. It is the common thread that can help each of us better support student success. So throughout this room, there are people who may be using data to tailor instruction to meet the needs of students in their classroom. Maybe there's a nod or two there. Maybe you are working to determine professional development in your district. Or maybe you are at the university and you are identifying and scaling the practices of schools that are showing progress. Maybe you're thinking about that in your work. Well, and so while all of our work might be different and our roles might be different, the power of data as a tool is what we are all in pursuit of. And it's really to share that mission of student success. I'd like to share a little story about my time in the Baltimore City schools. And this is when I was serving as the Chief Accountability Officer for the school systems about five or 6 years ago. And I think Elsie mentioned it, but Baltimore, Maryland is a very high-need urban district, 85,000 students, 250 plus schools there. And it was funny. Everything is fine, right? Everybody thinks that, right? All is fine. We were at the time in the early stages of thinking about data and how it could inform some of our work. But what we were finding is that we just weren't using the right data to get at the questions that we needed answers to. And one subject where this was particularly evident was in thinking about and measuring student attendance. So up until that point, the district had been using average daily attendance. Well, if you've seen average daily attendance before, and in Baltimore City schools, what we found is that our average daily attendance was upwards of 90%, 95%, 99% each day. But what we were also finding is that if our average daily attendance was that high in this district, then why isn't that our student achievement was not matching this very high attendance rate? So we said, well, there must be a mismatch. And also we started to ask teachers, that average daily attendance number was not what the reality was happening in their classrooms. So then we started to look at chronic absence. And boy, did that open up boy, did that really open up information for us. So despite that the data looked good on that average daily attendance, questions again remained about student achievement and why we weren't doing well. So we started looking at the chronic absentee data, and the way that we defined it was 10 or more days absent in a given throughout the year. So that would be about 1 day a month. And we looked at the chronic absenteeism in relation to students' graduation, dropout rates, and also their progress on the achievement exams. Well, first what we found is there was a very high relationship between dropout rate, chronic absenteeism, off track as they went through high school. But also, what we found was most startling is that our chronic absenteeism rate was upwards of 30% in the whole system, and in high schools was probably more like 40 to 45%. Just take a moment. That meant nearly half of our high school students were absent 10 or more days each school year. But our average daily attendance, right, when we looked at it every day, was in the 90s. You can see where that real disconnect came in. So, of course, as any good data person did, we started to track this. And we gave it to our principals. And our CEO started to talk with the principals. And they loved it, right? Wrong. Well, the first thing you can imagine, what do you think principals said? This data's wrong. Where did you get it from? How many have ever heard that before as data people? What is this? So we get a lot of pushback about the data not being right. That they challenged the accuracy. And after they challenged the accuracy, folks were just simply unsure of what to do about this. Okay, so we know this, now what? What are we going to do? It became a real question of the resource capacity, right? If this issue is so big, how are we don't have the resources to be able to help this matter, both in a capacity and perhaps in a real resource personnel issue. And so then they just didn't know how to respond. So there was the immediate was the defensiveness about, well, this is wrong, this is inaccurate, and perhaps it could have been in some places. And then the second was, and then what? What can I do about this? So we realized that in just releasing this data, we had made a big mistake. Great that we shine that flashlight on this critical piece, but we really kind of did it with a hammer and not a flashlight. And so what we really realized is just releasing data doesn't drive action. It's what the meaning behind that data is. You must make meaning out of the data in order to create action. So we have to take a few steps back. We had to do a lot of work strengthening our communication around this new indicator. We had to have real discussions with principals, talking with them about the value of this information, right? Why is it important to care about this? Make meaning about this data point. Why is this important to look at each day? Why is it not enough to look at the average daily attendance? Again, we had to really think about what that communication was and how we were talking and dialoguing about that. From there, we also recognized that we alone, as a district, did not have the insight necessary to understand and address the problem fully. So we reached out to researchers and community organizations to help us with the problem. We helped them, we asked folks to help us either work on designing interventions or helping us with outreach support with our community organizations. And at the root, this experience was a lesson for me in humility, but also a lesson in the importance of communications and trust building that must go hand in hand with meaningful data use. So a couple of key takeaways from this story. Data cannot live in silos. Power comes when people use it to work across sectors, to power insights, imagine what's possible, and determine how to get there. This work is not easy. I have the scars on my back to prove it. For my Baltimore City story, I have many, many more to share. But it is vital to improve outcomes for students. And just a note about chronic absenteeism. This is not just an issue for urban districts. Chronic absenteeism data is something that is part of Montana's state plan under the Every Student Succeeds Act. And it can be a real barrier to student achievement. And so similar opportunities to explore and dig into this information are really present in the story that I shared about Baltimore City. So now that I've discussed the power of education to improve, I want to transition now to talk about the work needed to make that possible. So making data work for students is far more than just a technical enterprise. As a matter of fact, if we start with the technical piece, my eyes actually glaze over, as do many of us, and you know when you say you had me at hello? Well, you don't have me at hello if we start with data as a technical enterprise. Yes, ensuring data quality and connecting and linking data systems are very important, but the other part of this work, and that's really what I'm going to be talking about throughout the rest of the morning, is that the part of the work that cannot be overlooked is creating the culture where data is valued and where everyone who needs data has the capacity to use it. Just thinking about that Baltimore City, giving data is not enough. You need to build that capacity and helping those understand it. So in recognizing this, at DQC, that's Data Quality Campaign, that's the acronym, but I don't like to throw out the alphabet soup. We have developed a set of recommendations for policymakers and leaders at all levels to achieve this transformation and make data work for students. If you take a look around the room, there are principals, superintendents, school counselors, educators, students, and more. Each of you, again, need different types of data to do your jobs. You need them in different formats, And what we did is we created these 4 policy priorities to be reflective and inclusive of the reality of the many roles. So I'm going to spend time unpacking each of these priorities and sharing a bit about DQC's finding and research. So while these 4 priorities are not interdependent, and they really do rely on each other, I'm going to try and share some distinct pieces as we go through them. And additionally, at DQC, we know that building a meaningful data culture requires that people's needs are at the center. And one stream of our work is focused around conducting polling and focus groups with parents and teachers to find out how they are thinking about and using data. And I will be sharing that information and some of our results from our recently released poll results throughout the rest of our conversation this morning. And then we also like to also share with you other highlights of state work that's going on within these different policy priorities. I'll keep the states nameless, but I want to share with you the art of the possible in some of these states around these policy priorities. And again, while every state is different and has its own context and challenges, we believe that sharing these stories, you can actually pull out what are the best practice and hopefully bring that and transfer that information to the work that you're doing within your state. And I want to challenge you to consider not only how these priorities and bright spots might enhance your ability to leverage data, but as we begin the necessary work of reaching out and across silos, to consider how these priorities can be useful to someone outside of your own role or sector. First one up, measure what matters. Be clear about what you want to achieve for students and have the data to ensure it gets done. So, data use, again, is much more than accountability and compliance to a government agency. And far too often, that's how we often think about data collection, right? At the U.S. Department of Education, one of my roles was the civil rights data collection. Oh my gosh, if you have ever done the civil rights data collection as a district, the state doesn't necessarily have to do that, but as a school leader, oh my goodness, you do feel like it's a compliance exercise. So, but it is much more than that. It's about meeting people's needs, aligning data systems and indicators to critical policy and practice questions make the data relevant. Let me share one possibility of what this work looks like when you're measuring what matters. So one of them is linking data across agencies, which helps us develop a fuller picture of what's happening in and out of school. So Elsie mentioned this a little bit, and I want to underscore what she said. Students don't live their life in pieces. When our data is siloed, that's how we treat them. Right? They go from elementary school to middle school to high school. Then they go on to post-secondary, and they go on to career, and they have lives in and out of the classroom. And each time they make that transition, far too often, we start again as they are this new person, and we don't understand what's happening in order to help address them and excel their progress. So we know that the power of data is in its ability to help us answer questions. And many of the most important questions about student progress require data from multiple systems to answer questions like, are all children entering school kindergarten ready? Perhaps you've asked that question. What is the relationship between high school courses and college success? It's one that I know that I have worked on and worked through, particularly in the New York City public schools. Is our state's education system producing career-ready graduates with knowledge aligned to the employer needs in any state? In my state, I'm sorry. early education, K-12, post-secondary, workforce, and other data sets related to students' lives and outcomes often sit in siloed data systems that do not talk to each other. A critical way to ensure that we have the data we need to measure what matters and answer the questions is by creating those data linkages. They can really help to present a fuller picture of what's happening for our students. Every year, the Data Quality Campaign conducts a landscape analysis of who's doing what in the various states. And in this past year, in 2017, 17 states and the District of Columbia have built already a P through 20 with workforce, linking early childhood, K-12, post-secondary, and workforce data. So this is a real opportunity for all of the other states to seize upon as they're looking to build the foundation for meaningful learning outcomes and culture of data use. One example of this is in a state whose education agency went beyond P20 and workforce. They entered into a data sharing agreement with their child welfare agency, which allowed them to secure automated information sharing between the K-12 and the child welfare system. And through their data sharing agreement, that information updates nightly. So now, teachers, school leaders, and caseworkers have access to timely information about students in foster care. But also, it helps policymakers and state leaders ensure the unique needs of these students are being met. And so moving on from what matters, our second policy priority is to make data use possible. So to make data use possible, you need to provide teachers and leaders the flexibility, training, and support they need to answer their questions and take action. So everyone needs training, time, and tools to access and use data effectively. Again, a key error in our ways in Baltimore City Schools was just getting that tracking out there. We thought that was going to be enough, but not giving the supports to how to use it, how do you think about it, was a real fault in that work. By creating a culture that supports people using data for improvement and building the conditions and capacity to sustain this culture, students benefit. So teachers and school leaders' ability to use data, again, as I mentioned, is critical for student success. As I mentioned earlier, over the past several years, the Data Quality Campaign has conducted a poll and focus groups involving teachers and parents, and that was a national poll. What's clear? And 86% of teachers, just this past May, when they were polled, they said they think using data is an important part of being an effective teacher. Overwhelming majority of teachers understand you need to have data in order to improve student achievement. However, what's also clear, and it comes out over and over again, that there's many barriers to this data use. Time, training, and limited access all become barriers and challenges preventing data use in the classroom each day. So creating data tools and resources to provide teachers actionable access to timely info about students is one opportunity that can really open up this work in classrooms to drive student achievement. So in one state, one data tool they created was an early warning system. It allows school-based administrators and teachers to access real-time data about whether students are on track for graduation and college and career success. So this helps make data use possible because now I, as a teacher in the state, can access this information. And I can ensure that I am providing the right support for my individual students in order to meet their needs and ensure ensure that they are on track in those important indicators for high school graduation and post-secondary success. The next policy priority is being transparent and earning trust. And Elsie also mentioned, Elsie, I think you gave a preview. I did. That's right. I can't underscore this policy priority enough. Be transparent and earn trust. Ensure that every community understands how its schools and students are doing, why data is valuable, and how it is protected and used. So people simply will not use data they do not trust. And if they don't, and they will not use it if they do not find it useful. Think about all the data that we get each day. You kind of tease out all the things that if you don't think it's important, we're busy, we have things to do. So if we don't think it has meaning for us, we're going to kind of put it in the box and maybe save it for later, maybe we'll get it. So it must be, and if you don't trust it, you discount it. So it needs to be trusted and it needs to be useful. How do we get there? Proactive, two-way communication is really the best way to create an environment in which people trust, value, and use data to support students. So, what does it take to do this? Well, I think state report cards are actually a key way states can work to build trust by sharing meaningful information with the public. At DQC, we firmly believe that getting people the data they need is essential because when families and communities have the right information to make decisions, students do excel. However, based on our poll, right now, only 58% of parents have reported looking at a school or district report card in the last 12 months. And more sobering, of those parents, 40% reported they were not even aware that the resources existed. So, all of you who might be working on a school report card, just take a sigh and think about how do we improve those numbers. We're doing really hard work, and we want families and the public to use this information. But then, so think about that and say, oh my gosh, this is a great opportunity for us to really make these better. We need to ensure that parents and others know that this resource first up, that this resource even exists. How often do parents say, I don't know this report card, and we see this in the data when we ask parents about this question. And then we need to make sure that they're designed in ways that are understandable and meet the information needs of parents and communities. Each year at DQC, we review every state's report card. And right now, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done across the board. There's bright spots in all places, and I'll share one, but on the whole, we all need to do some work there. So often, three things on these report cards. They are hard to find, hard to use, and hard to understand. Navigating these report cards. How many of you have seen your Montana State report card?
We don't have one yet.
Yeah.
There's a presentation tomorrow.
Okay, good. Okay, then the no hand is okay. But you did have one before.
No, we have never. Montana's never had a statewide until ESSA.
Okay, all right. Well, this is great news for everyone here. I did not know that. I thought that you had a state report card. Now you were revamping it. So, again, so take these lessons to heart, everyone who goes through their report cards and thinking about it. So, first of all, navigating through the state report cards, if you go onto another state's report card, they can be difficult and confusing. For instance, it can take 3 or 4 or even 5 clicks to actually, from the search engine, to actually find the state report card. And in many cases, the data is buried deep in confusing spreadsheets or complex tables. Okay, remember, that audience in mind. Language is often written on, what grade level do you think? Want to take a guess, anyone?
4th.
I'm sorry?
4th grade.
Grade 15 is what report cards are often.
Oh, they should be written.
They should be written at we recommend 8th grade, yes. But grade 15 is often because we forget, right? We're so busy trying to get this information out and wanting to present it in what we think is the clearest way, we forget the audience. And then, oh my goodness, one of my biggest pet peeves is acronyms abound in these state report cards. So that alphabet soup gets folks really lost. That's insider baseball. That is not what a parent readily understands and can use. And so clearly the value of this information is limited if parents and communities cannot access or understand it. And this really matters. How and where you present information tells a story about what matters to you as a state. Right? What you put in that report card are the things that matter to you. So now you need to help make that matter to families and communities. So one state that has really taken this to heart has just released a newly designed school report card. It's easy to use, easy to find, and really designed with parents and the public in mind. The report card website appears first in the results of a basic internet search. And once on the homepage, navigating to find a particular school or district is actually easy to do. The report card, the text is written in simple, plain language, and the data is organized by questions. I like this idea. It's just organized by questions. So parents know what they can do with the information they see. So for example, one of the questions on the report card is this school preparing high school students for college and career? And then the data follows. But again, it's helping with that context of what is it that table or presentation of the data mean. Another question could be, how strong is the teacher workforce in our school? And then this approach ensures that users don't have to decipher confusing titles or look across multiple pages to understand a school's performance. There's also less room for confusion and frustration because the information the state wants the public to use is easy to find. And this information is used. It's used from parents who want to make some decisions about the schools that their children attend. It is important for policymakers in allocating funds to ensure that all kids have a great education. And while states are required now to produce these report cards, again, think about it as the opportunity to share about education in the state of Montana with the community and the public and parents. And we know that, I do know this, that Montana is making an investment in designing a new report card. And I had just heard even, I think late last week, there was proposed changes were announced about how school performance data will be presented on the state report card. And this continual work of improving report cards is critical to ensuring that the reports are clear and actionable tools for parents and communities. Okay, let's go on to our fourth priority. Guarantee access and protect privacy. But you were wondering when this would come up. So as I've shared, students will not be successful if the individuals closest to them have timely, tailored access to information that they need to help students. Now, if you recall from a few slides ago, we already discussed that teachers are one group that really needs stronger access to secure and quality information. So as I explore the final priority, I would like to talk a little bit about parents now, and the work that states can do to ensure that this equally important group has access to the data they need to make decisions about their child's education. Okay. So, similar to teachers, 93% of parents say they need data like grades and test scores to understand their child's progress and help them do their best. But sort of similar. The trends really are similar with parents and teachers, but only 38% of public school parents strongly agree that they have access to all the information they need to support their child's education. So yet again, while parents recognize the value of education data, they too are not fully satisfied with the data and information that they have access to. The good news is, despite this, and this is something that I think that is very encouraging, parents do feel that their schools are doing a good job of keeping their students' data safe. Our poll shows that 87% of parents trust that their child's school is keeping their child's data private and secure. And this is hugely important. Think about trust. And this is hugely important as we think about ways to expand access to data, and we cannot compromise student data privacy or security. One state who has really seized upon the opportunity to both guarantee access and protect privacy created a data tunnel. Sounds so neat, doesn't it? And it securely links data from the state's longitudinal data system directly to district-level administrators and teachers and parents, and each one has a role-based access to this system. So as a result, district officials can now view and compare state and local performance on specific schools. Teachers and parents have access to the detailed longitudinal data that they need in the classroom and at home. And then this means that everyone who needs data has access to that tailored information while at the same time keeping it private and secure. So the data is there, but only those who need the access get the access. Okay, so that was a lot. But I hope in sharing those examples and unpacking those priorities, it gives you inspiration around what this work can look like and get you excited about bringing the data vision to life here in Montana. And the great thing is, Montana already has a strong foundation in place to build on the work that has already been done to create this transformative culture of data. And we see that in our leadership, there's a value there, and in the summit today, that there's real value being placed on thinking carefully about the data work in the state. And I just want to touch on 3 success factors that are here already in place. One is, I'm going to read this, but I love it. It's such a clever acronym, but I don't want to start with the acronym going back to my point earlier. The growth and enhancement of Montana students in students' data system, cleverly named GEMS. GEMS is valuable because it links data over time, and it offers the ability to observe trends and answer questions about the why and how behind student outcomes, and hopefully will drive continuous improvement in classrooms. Next, under ESSA, Montana has set important new state goals around achievement and has reignited conversations around improvement and action. So really using ESSA as a driver, Montana has a great ability to really move this needle forward. And finally, and lastly, and most importantly, all of you in this room, because you care about data, you're here. So everyone who's in this room cares about this work and is invested in the vision of student success. And what I know for sure, and what I hope you know for sure, is that in order to build an education system where students' needs are truly at the center, data must play a crucial role. And you, I have now anointed you the data champions of the state, have a critical role in making this happen. So, if nothing else, please remember, and I'm going to say it and I'm going to ask you all to say it. Data is about people, not systems. Let me hear you.
Data is about people, not systems.
Okay, next time you'll do it with a little more enthusiasm. But these words should, for all of you, these words should just keep going around and around. Data is much more than an IT project. Remember when I started, I said, oh my goodness, if you start with the technicalities of linking data and all of those things, you don't have me at hello, you lose me at hello. So it's much more than that IT project. We must must push past the confines of viewing data merely for compliance or checking the box. Building a culture where data is valued and used to drive action requires that at every level, we are thinking about and prioritizing how data will be accessed, understood, and acted on by the people who need it. Too often we build the system and then figure out how the people are going to interact with that system, and not flipping that on its head. Start with the people, because data is about people. Thank you. And as you go through this summit, please keep that in mind, please keep this in mind, and then also I'd like you just to consider a last few thoughts as you start to build this transformational data culture. Releasing data on its own is not enough. We saw that in my example in Baltimore City Schools. I could point to at least a dozen or so where I have made this very big mistake, and probably many of you within this room can also reflect on your own work in this area. So let's really start by putting a stake in the ground that action improvement does not just happen. It's not just magic. Let's not assume that by releasing data somewhere and just building a report, ta-da, the results will just magically get better. It doesn't happen that way. Once you release the data, you need to be thinking intentionally about who you are, about how you are building the culture, capacity, conditions for everyone, teachers, school leaders, whoever needs that data, and to be able to use it to actually make decisions that support students. And to do that well, do not overlook the vital role of communication. How you communicate about this work will help invest people in a narrative of action and find value and meaning in it. That brings me to the next point. Meaningful data use requires meaningful data. Not all data are created equal. People will not use data unless they value it and they understand it. When you create a data tool or resource, you need to really keep that audience in mind. This means that you must ensure the way you are designing it, the way you present information is relevant to the audience, that it can be understood by them and really can help meet their information needs. Again, the system over here, and then we figure out how the people can use it. Other way around. Audience matters. This applies whether you are a policymaker communicating to state and district leaders or a principal communicating with parents and teachers. Audience matters, how you communicate this information. And each of you in this room need different types of information and data presented in different formats, degrees of context to do your jobs. One set of data cannot serve everyone in the same way in the same room. Taking action requires trust. No matter, again, if you're a policymaker or a parent, in order to take action with the data, you must have confidence in the information you are using. Think back to the story and lessons learned that I shared from Baltimore City. Part of building that trust is that you remember that data is created by people. And it reflects a series of decisions made by people about what gets counted, what's important, and what's not. So, to fully understand that data, what it means, what it reflects, and what can you do with it, you have to start by understanding the decisions that went into shaping the data and considering how that data can or cannot inform action. So this means asking important questions of the data, like, where do these numbers come from? Is the data giving me a complete picture of what's happening in schools and classrooms? Was anything or anyone important left out of these data? What questions can this data help to answer? What questions can this data not help answer? And remember, now that you are all anointed data champions, Remember that this requires that you not only strengthen your own ability to become a savvier consumer of data, but also work to empower others to become savvy consumers of data. So finally, back to that big idea. By bringing all of you across the state together, this summit really represents the first part of making this data vision possible. This is an opportunity to break down silos, build trust, and engage with each other. So I hope as you continue throughout your next day and a half at the summit, you will talk with people who have a different role or perspective than you. There are so many different roles and responsibilities in this room. I do hope that you have the ability to network across different roles. Go to sessions that aren't just focused on your role. There's so many great sessions here at the summit, and I hope that you really, kind of expand a little bit. You'll get to meet and talk with other people, and that's what's so important. And also, I wouldn't be right if I didn't add. I brought over a table of resources. I don't want to bring it back to DC, but I really want all of you to have them. And they have infographics, some of the things that you've seen here, reports and fact sheets. And it really gives you an opportunity to see some of the in-depth work that we do at the Data Quality Campaign and how we think and work to make data work for students. So on that note, please have a wonderful conference.